Hello, everybody. Welcome to this month's edition of the Wellness Policy. I believe this is number 35. We've done 35 of these, still on the air. So thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to us. And thank you to my co-hosts for joining me once again this month. Welcome, first of all, Jordan Goodman. Hey, Jordan.
Yes. Hello, Wai. This feels like the olden days where it's just you and I. What
Well, what do you
gives?
mean?
Well, more recently, in the past year, 2 years maybe, we've had a I guess he's still considered a co-host, but like in this triad that we've been trying out. Unfortunately, I guess it hasn't worked out, and we're back to the original duo.
He's not coming? Like,
No,
what
wait.
did he
I
tell you?
thought. Well, I fired Neil, but I thought you asked me to.
I mean, I sent the link and everything. I thought he was going to be here.
No, I fired him.
You did? Why? On what grounds?
Well, we promoted that I had it's ahistoric, not an historic. We've discussed this at length.
Right.
We promoted that I have a historic announcement, and I was under the assumption that just meant you wanted me to fire Neil.
No, that's not the announcement. Okay. Well, I was trying to actually pretend that I didn't know, but I obviously that wasn't going to work. We should have coordinated this gag before, but yeah, Neil sent us a message, couldn't make it, and the reason is because he's sick. I'm sick. Jordan's sick. The entire world is sick. Should we be concerned? Maybe, maybe not. But hope Neil feels better. Wish he could join us. I'm sure he's listening.
Yes.
Nonetheless, we're here to talk about music, Jordan Goodman. But I also don't even want to. I don't want to delay this any further. Okay, Jordan Goodman has a historic announcement, as he said. You can read it in the show description. A historic announcement. How will you be changing history now?
I mean, I guess it depends. It's all relative, obviously, depending on who finds this historic. I feel like the Chris Elliott's of the world would probably find this to be life-changing. Perhaps he will, I guess, a new lens through which someone like him to make decisions moving forward. So last month, I was in this actual room in Annapolis, my girlfriend Lily's parents' house. And we had no plan last month, Wai, as far as the show in general, as far as what we'd be talking about. And early on in the show, you just started poking around at my romantic relationship of about 3 years. And after that conversation live on YouTube, I was thinking to myself, I was like, well, the thing with Lily, it's been going well. And I was sharing glowingly about it, we could say, and all truthful. By the way, I joke, I kid, I kibitz at times, but what I was sharing about the relationship with Lily, very genuine, and so I thought to myself, well, if I spoke that glowingly on the wellness policy, then maybe I should propose marriage, not propose marriage is what we're talking about, and
Right.
and so that's what I did, and she said yes.
Woo!
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a strong woo from Wai Ting.
I mean, beyond that, maybe we can throw some confetti here.
Wow.
Throw some balloons on my new Apple MacBook.
Wow. So you finally got a new computer.
I got a new computer. Yeah.
Oh, that's so only yours. You can't send me some of this on my
I can't
screen?
do it. No, but we're celebrating two things today: my new computer and also Jordan Goodman's engagement. Congratulations to you, Jordan. I'm very, very happy to hear about it.
Thank you, Wai. Thank you. You walked so I could run. I'm literally just following in your footsteps. I will likely have a new computer sometime sooner than later that has CGI balloons or whatever we would call them. Yeah, it feels good. And to kind of segue into the topic of the day, the place that the engagement took place was on the stage of Merriweather Post Pavilion, my favorite music venue that I first went to as I think a seventh grader, perhaps in 1998. And I would argue one of the most historic music venues currently standing. Back from 1967, never had a corporate sponsor. This is no Bank of America Pavilion. This is Merriweather Post Pavilion of the Post cereal fame. And I guess maybe the original corporate sponsor.
Oh, I didn't realize it was related to Post cereal.
Marjorie was the daughter of, I believe, the patriarch of
Merriweather.
Post.
Who's Merriweather then?
That's her name. The daughter of Post cereals, Merriweather Post.
Oh, they named it after her.
Yeah, well, I think she was philanthropic, and it was supposed to be the home for like a national symphony. I'm sure the details are a bit off. This is in Columbia, Maryland, which is not too far from Washington, D.C. It seems like she kind of flaked, and it never became that. But the name stands. Animal Collective released a well-known album.
That's how I know the name. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know many places in Maryland, period, but I guess I know that one just because of that album.
There you go. Yeah, like Jimi Hendrix performed there. The only time Led Zeppelin and The Who had a co-headline show was at this venue, and one of the few independent venues that stands in this country, not owned or operated by Live Nation or AEG. So for many, many reasons, it is obviously a music venue that is near and dear to my heart, and thus I wanted my engagement to take place on that same stage.
Wow. See, you had told me and Neil about this, that you were planning on doing it maybe, I don't know, a week or two out. And I had no idea I got the sense that you had progressed pretty far into the relationship. I mean, you've been living with your partner for
2 years?
2 years now, yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess it's only natural. At the same time, it's not like you and I have ever really discussed even the idea of marriage, and I never even really understood sort of like where you were sitting with it, whether or not you even wanted to get married at all in the future.
Really? We haven't talked about that?
I don't think so.
I guess not.
Like, I don't know. You kind of struck me as like somebody who might be a bit hesitant about commitment, to be honest.
Ooh, tell me why.
I don't know. You're just such a free spirit, you know.
Thank
And
you.
like even if you are obviously very happy and comfortable in a relationship, I guess marriage is sort of like, that that lock that, I guess I wasn't sure because I'd never really spoken to you at length about it. So maybe that's a future episode.
You're right in that commitment, and not just in a romantic relationship, but like even me committing to like Ring of Honor was the only time I had like an actual job with a salary, and like that was a commitment. There was nothing more than I wanted at the time, but also it was terrifying because it was a crazy commitment that would change my life, and it did. You are right in that historically commitment has been something that has felt I think I've interpreted that with the loss of freedom erroneously. But there's been relationships where it has felt like to be committed to this person, I give up some of my truthfulness, and thus those relationships were not sustainable. The thing that I felt with Lily throughout is that I feel such total freedom and permission to be myself with her. That this really felt like an easy decision to make, and thus it was kind of obvious to me to take this next natural step.
Is it Lily with one L or two L's?
Well, it's two L's, but the first L is at the beginning of the name. So Lily.
Understand. Okay.
Yeah.
There we go.
Oh, look at that.
Shit, I misspelled it.
That's like three L's.
I spelled it with a capital I, so it looks like three L's.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, it's the new computer. You're still getting used to these buttons.
Yeah, that's right. I put the heart in there though. Okay. Well, again, I'd love to talk to you a bit more at length about that. I'm sure Neil would too. Maybe that's a future edition of the Wellness Policy. We're not here to talk about engagements. We're not here to talk about marriage, nor the loss of freedom, nor the gaining of freedom.
No, fuck all that.
We are here to talk about music, and obviously Jordan is somebody who proposed at a concert venue that's near and dear to you. Obviously music is a big part of your life, as it is mine, as it is, I'm sure, for most people that might be listening to this right now, especially those of you that are watching us right now at youtube.com/postwrestling. Thank you for being here, watching us live. We expect you to fill Neil's place.
Yes.
Okay. Fill in for Neil Flanagan. Join us. The StreamYard link is in the chat room right now. Call in if you'd like to jump into the conversation. We will talk to anybody.
Yeah, we have a nice community of people live on post wrestling YouTube right now. Welcome, everyone.
But you and I have done an episode in the past. I feel like 2 years ago, talking to Dan Dobransky about music. And obviously in an hour and a half, we weren't fully able to just encapsulate the full experience of music, right? So at least we're going to try to do that with another hour and a half episode here. Why did you decide to bring this topic up this week?
Because it was easy and it's fun. And sometimes with these episodes, the topics tend to be like a bit heavier or thornier in nature, and that's great. But I love music. I most identify as a musician. If someone asks me like, "Who are you?" or "What do you do?" I don't say marketer or psychotherapist, or like I say I'm a drummer or I'm a musician, or an artist most generally. So yeah, I often say that the two loves of my life are music and pro wrestling. And I was thinking about this earlier today. Pro wrestling is something that, I've done. I've trained and performed when I was younger as a wrestler. I've worked in wrestling. I now have a podcast as part of a wrestling community. But obviously I'm a fan. I'm a consumer of it. But like, it's not who I am. And music is a part of who I am. It's just such a fundamental difference when I think about these two loves of my life. So one, I'm always down to chat about music. You as a friend of mine, Wai, I know you're very interested in music. I know you are a musician, and we talk about it at times, but I'm certainly very interested to know more. But also when we had Dan on a few years ago, I feel like that conversation was more about like a fundamental purpose of music, or how music can serve as like a function to one's wellness. And I'm interested in being a bit more personal today and talking about the songs, the bands, the live concert experiences like that have impacted us more personally. That sounds
awesome.
fun.
It does sound fun. I'm looking forward to it. But first of all, I guess something I want to talk a bit about, maybe your sort of like feeling of identity, and why something like music is something that you consider defines you more than the thing that you probably spend even more time on, which is like your work and your business. Well, for one thing, you are a professional musician. Like you tour, you've made money doing music. Right?
The most money I've made in life has been as a musician, and for the longest, and really up until lockdown, my career, which at that point was about 7-ish years as a mental health professional, I'd say 85% of that work as a clinician was as a musician. I was mostly doing drum circle group therapy, where it was a legitimate group therapy of clients or patients, and I'm billing their medical insurance. But it was a drum circle group. We were literally sitting in a circle, and every participant had a drum or percussion instrument. And that was my main therapeutic modality up until lockdown, where that really wasn't a possibility anymore. So the majority of my professional life, I mean, everything I did, or not everything, but the majority of my focus in my graduate studies and my internships thereafter was like exploring the healing potentials of rhythm and drumming. So in addition to, I've been teaching music lessons for probably 15 years now, done thousands of those. And the more traditional things that we think about a professional musician doing, making albums, releasing them through labels, touring and performing, and those more traditional things, that has been, I've been doing that, or at least working toward that, since I was a little kid.
Would you even say like your sort of career path has been somewhat led by your interest in music? You kind of found a way to merge or use music as a form of therapy, in order to become a therapist.
Yeah. So when I started the grad school program in clinical psychology, this is back in 2008 or so, at the time, it was, okay, this feels like a safer career route. after years in the music business, which is the Wild West, not unlike pro wrestling, where there isn't like an ethical, like there aren't ethical guidelines or standards that, or like professional organizations that we're kind of committed to, that you would find in medical fields. I was like, well, this psychology route seems safer. It seems more realistic even. And I learned very early on within the first semester, probably, that if I don't show up as a musician primarily, I would be filled with a ton of regret. So it was at that point I found legitimate ways to lead with my musicianship first, and found credible ways to integrate my musicianship and the musicianship that we all naturally like have as people. We all have a heartbeat, thus we all have rhythm. And so with that understanding, for me, it was just trying to find credible ways to bring musicality to, and music therapy exists as a field. That's not the path I went on. That's its own degree and license that at the time, at least, was not offered in the state of Maryland. But it also would not have been a path I would have chosen, because I'm not a vocalist. I'm not interested in that. I can play guitar, but not to the point, and certainly not piano, where I feel like many music therapists, that's part of their training. But I'm a more traditional by training psychotherapist, professional mental health counselor, and who has integrated my musicianship, drumming and rhythm specifically, into that path. Yeah. Even just from like a ego point of view, or just sense of self point of view, like to abandon myself as musician or drummer as a primary sense of identity just felt inauthentic, for better or worse. So I kind of stuck to my guns and have continued to do so.
Makes a lot of sense. You know, you're following, I guess, your interests, and it seems like you're very, very interested in music. Um, I guess for me, music has always been more of a hobby. You know, I would never define myself as a musician, first and foremost. It's just something I use as a way to get away from, I suppose, work
Mm.
or other things, or just to have fun. The way somebody might, I guess, look at, I don't know, playing in a basketball league on their weekends as sort of like a recreation. It's a
Yeah.
social activity for me as well. Um, but yeah, I've never really like thought about a career doing it, nor do I think I'd be dedicated or good enough at it. But that's just kind of where I'm coming at.
Well, let's start at the beginning. Where did music come into your life where it felt like you were choosing it and
Right.
connecting with it?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. It's a good way to differentiate maybe how we might experience music before we choose to experience it. Because I actually grew up with music all around me. My mom is she's a early childhood educator that uses a lot of music in her teaching,
Oh,
and
wow.
yeah, she plays the piano. Like, that's sort of her thing. Like, she'll play the piano for the kids and everything. Um, and in fact, like when I was young, we would be taken, or I would be taken to all these like music teacher camps
Hmm.
that she would attend. And so I was just like around music as an educational tool pretty much my whole life. I have two older brothers who were very much into music themselves. In fact, I would consider both of them musicians. One of them professionally, he's a music producer in Hong Kong, and the other is a very talented player who has more gear than he ever needs. So I grew up around it all, and in fact, like, it was because I grew up around it so much that I was almost kind of avoidant of it.
Hmm.
Um, but it wasn't until, I guess, I got a bit older, and then, like, really caught up with pop culture, and my friends were, really getting into buying CDs and everything. And of course, for me, it was the Spice Girls that ultimately brought it all together. It
Hmm.
was, the I
Wanna
would say
wannabe.
the pinnacle of art and the pinnacle of music.
Yes.
Ginger,
Yes.
baby, posh, scary, sporty.
Mm.
And I'm at Walmart, and then I never bought a CD before. Never asked my mom to buy a CD for me. And then I went through the Walmart electronics section and I was like, "Hey, mom, can I have this?" And I remember feeling nervous about it almost. Like I was like trying to break through a seal, like I was like I was entering a new phase and
Hmm.
growing up. And beyond that, it was like I guess buying like I was getting into like I guess girls at the time too, and this was almost just like a part of that. So as part of my adolescence, my awakening, uh, two became one, and
Wow.
I got my first CD.
Wow. And so was it like, would you listen to the whole album or was it just the few singles?
Oh my god, the whole album! It's a classic,
Okay,
dude.
you
It's only 10.
devoured it.
It's only 10 songs.
I've never listened to the album.
You missing
I
out, buddy.
I was taken by the single. I actually, this is so odd, and never would have thought of this otherwise. I remember the first time this song was "Wannabe." Yes.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
yeah, of course.
So there was a show on MTV. This predated TRL. It was hosted by Carson Daly. It may have been the first thing that he was involved with on MTV proper. And I believe it was a 30-minute show. Came on like dinner time, like 6:30, 7 p.m. And just a block of videos. Typically, a 30-minute block would be about 5 videos on MTV at the time. And I remember him introducing this group to the world, and he was like, these are Spice Girls. This is what the Spice Girls are. Here's this new song "Wannabe," and I know exactly where I was, like what TV I was watching it on, and I just have this very distinct memory of, oh, I'm being introduced to this thing that then became this phenomenon. I liked the song, dare I say, I fucked with the song, but I never was like a fan of theirs. I don't think I ever bought. I definitely did not buy the full album. At the time, I would buy singles, like even back then, maybe even a cassette single, but I don't even think I did that with that song.
Were you already on a path? Like, were you
Very
already
much so.
swayed by like 311, and thus it was sort of like the antithesis of what you were actually already into?
My Spice Girls kind of was All for One. We remember All for One, I
Oh
swear.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
this was, I think I was in this was, I think 4th grade, like maybe 94, because I remember I had my first girlfriend at the time. And this was like a song that we shared together I remember this is back when I would record music off of the radio station on my boombox. And then, so right when you got to like on a cassette tape,
Oh
and
yeah.
so the DJ would always talk over the beginning and the end, and it was infuriating because you couldn't get just a clean record of a song on the radio.
Yeah.
But that was the first CD that my Aunt Barb got for me. So that was the first CD that I guess I had asked for and that I had owned. I liked them a lot. The song, I think there's a song, "She's Got Skills" with the Z. Highly recommend that song.
She's
But
got skills. Okay.
I
Yes.
think that's what it's
With a
called.
Z. Yeah.
Yes,
She's
yes.
got skills. I'm looking at the track list right now for All for One. The
Okay.
the first track is called "The Bomb," of course.
Yes, yes. The Bomb, not Da
Mhm.
Bomb. Big
Yeah.
difference.
She's got skills with the Z. So
Yes.
much in love, down to the last drop. All right. I'll have to check this out. Okay.
But even still, even like I probably listened to those first handful of songs. I never listened all the way through because I don't think they were that good. They were like Boys to Men light. Let's be real. Boys to Men actually were supposed to be my first concert, if we're not counting like Ninja Turtles live.
Yeah.
So maybe 2nd or 3rd grade, it was Boys to Men touring with Montel Jordan. My mom got us tickets, but the tour, or at least that show, was canceled because one of the boys was injured. So I didn't get to my first concert until maybe 1997 was my first actual concert. There we go. By the way, Boys to Men, they are like Chili's, the restaurant, if you're familiar. They're like killing it on social media. I've been DMing all the Red Robins and the Chili's for years, trying to give them ideas. Finally, they're going with it. And Boys to Men are bringing those baby back ribs back.
All 4 of them?
No. So one of them dropped out a long time ago. The only time I saw them was maybe 15 years ago, unintentionally. I was in the city of Philadelphia, Motown Philly, we could say, and walking by a record store, and the 3 of them were just doing like some a cappella performance. So I did finally get to see them all these years later.
So was Boys to Men your first love?
No, no. See, like when I think of first love, like it's hard because musical was always there for me. Like in the car with my mom, it was Motown. In the car with my dad, it was, you know, Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, Beatles, stuff like that. I was really into Michael Jackson, like at a very young age. And so really, I'd say MTV was my first love, like as far as me choosing to engage with music culture. And that's where Boyz II Men came into my life. That's where All For One came into my life. I'd say my first love, as far as a rock band feeling like my own, was probably Bush. And there will be bands that I mention in this conversation today that will feel embarrassing for me to admit to, but I'm here to be honest with the people.
First of all, what year?
So Bush, 16 Stone was the album. I'm guessing that came out 94, 95. Because
like
that
Machine Head and everything?
Yeah, like because Nirvana, I mean, this was essentially, okay, Nirvana and grunge, like obviously broke through to the point of maturing. And now can we find Nirvana light? And Bush was certainly that.
Okay. Did you, by the way, so are you aware that in Canada they had a different name? So in Canada, I guess when they were popular around here, they were always known as Bush X.
Huh. Is this because of like President Bush, or just because like pussy?
No. It's because there was already a Canadian band by the name of Bush that had come out. And
Bush
this
X.
This is like the only time that I feel like this has happened, where like a band has like a certain name in other parts of the world, and then like in this country specifically, they were known as Bush X. And I remember like Gavin Ross still talking about like, well, that doesn't even sound like my band's name. That's somebody else's band's name. But I also personally feel Bush X is a way better name than Bush.
Well, it's easier to Google, certainly.
It just sounds cooler, Bush.
Yeah, Bush
just
X.
Sounds silly.
Like, yeah, Mountain Dew X, you know?
Yeah, the letter X, yeah.
You had just brought up the Razorblade Suitcase album. That was their second album. That was the first concert I went to. They toured right when that was released. It was at the USA Arena in Landover, Maryland, suburb of Washington, D.C., the old Capitol Center, if you're an old WWF head from back in the day. And Bush and Veruca Salt. So technically, Veruca Salt was the first rock band that I'd seen live. And I remember walking in there, being overwhelmed by how loud it was. And like, it was like, that changed my life without hyperbole. Like that night changed my life. Just going to a rock show, seeing probably 12,000 or more people just joining in community around these songs and this band that I loved at the time. Like I was psychotic. I remember at the time being in the car with my maternal grandmother. It was just her and I, and Bush Come Down was on the radio. And I was saying to her at the time, she was probably like, you know, a 65-year-old woman. I was like, Grandma, this is the best song that has ever existed. And with full conviction, by the way, of trying to convince this woman that Bush Come Down was the pinnacle of musical achievement in human history. So going to that show, that opened up everything for me. And they certainly weren't the only band I was into. WHFS was the local alt-rock radio station out of DC that I resonated with most at the time. And very influential, I'd argue, just as much as K-Rock on the West Coast in LA. And so Bush wasn't the only band. I mean, I was very much into like many bands at this time, but Bush was my band. Like I kind of claimed them as mine, and that was like the first concert, and that kind of set it off for me. Like those were the songs I was learning as a 10-year-old on guitar.
So when I went to LA, like I think at this point, like 2 years ago, I went to like a food festival, and I saw Gavin Rossdale eating a snow cone.
Wow. Dude, that guy's jacked even still. Like Bush is having a career resurgence right now, at least in their touring. Yeah, they're kind of low key killing it this past couple years, like post pandemic.
Mhm.
I just saw pictures recently because an old colleague of mine saw them in the past week or two, and he's looking good. That Gavin Ross stuff.
What did you think of his relationship with Gwen Stefani?
I don't think. I mean, I was always a fan of her. Both like No Doubt was super cool. Only saw them once. The Return, Rings of Saturn, whatever that album was called. Actually, you know what? That's a story. I saw that at Merriweather. I believe in the year 2000. It was No Doubt, the band Lit, and the openers were a pre-Fergie Black Eyed Peas.
Okay, yeah, back when I mean, I remember that era. Like they
Yeah.
were actually a lot more serious, but I mean, they probably made far less money than they did.
Oh,
Afterwards.
certainly. I mean, they played the Super Bowl many years later.
Yeah.
But I don't think I had a No Doubt was cool. Gwen Stefani was hot. Like, great, good for him.
Yeah, I just remember they were a very popular couple back then, and sad to see that end up. But you know, they both seem happier as a result.
Oh, Gwen Stefani with Blake Shelton now, like she's palling around with Carson Daly and Nikki Bello on the USA Network.
I mean, is that a good thing?
Is that
a sign of happiness?
Would you say no to Barmageddon following Monday Night Raw away?
I don't even know what that is. So
okay.
So then you get into Bush, you go to the concert, your life has changed. You're like, forget this Boys to Men stuff. I'm a man now.
Exactly. Yes.
I'm into
Perfect.
Bush.
I'm into Bush. I'm getting into Bush.
All right. And then what's next? What's after Bush?
So then it was spring 98 and it was my first show at Merriweather. So again, Merriweather Post Pavilion, that's the amphitheater, the shed, we sometimes call it in the States.
Is the sound good, by the way, at that place?
I can't tell you if it was back then, but today it is. I mean, they've spent $50 million over the past handful of years renovating a lot of that venue. Okay. And also it depends, but it depends on who's mixing, who the band is. So for instance, this past year, one of the many bands I saw was Garbage. The drummer is Butch Vig, who produced Nirvana Nevermind. So like that guy is going to make sure that his band sounds immaculate in any space.
Right.
So, so I may have shared this story before, so forgive me if I share any of these again, but it was 98. And so at this point, I'm like 12 or 13. My brother is 11 or 12. And it's mostly our mom taking us to these shows. And she basically said, you can pick of one of these two shows at Merriweather. They both were happening within the same few weeks. We picked the band Live. Maybe in Canada they were Live X. And again, a terrible name to Google. We picked Live with support by Luscious Jackson, which was a huge regret. We did it because we thought my mom would prefer that over the show we really wanted to go to, which was Rage Against the Machine and Wu-Tang Clan. So that was look at that the fucking hat on this bass player that is, and the guitarist. Yeah, Live, they were a hat band. By the way, I'll just shout out Pat Finnerty. What makes this song stink? He did this whole deep dive on the band Live recently. He interviewed a journalist from Rolling Stone that kind of researched the turmoil with the band Live. Highly recommend this. What a goofy ass band. I've probably seen Live at least 10 times at this point.
So what at that time, what made you choose Live over Rage and Wu-Tang?
Because our mom was taking us and we thought our mom would enjoy that much more.
Oh, okay. So I mean, you're being a good son.
We were being considerate, but dude, Rage and Wu-Tang in 1998 would have been amazing. I do know.
Did they even finish? Did they even make it to Baltimore? They ended the tour early.
So the show did happen at Merriweather. I do know that people. So like the venue, at least now, the pavilion, all seated, holds about 5,000, give or take, and then there's a lawn that holds about maybe 16,000 people. So I do know that at that specific show at Merriweather, there was a bum rush of people on the lawn running into the pavilion and vandalizing, breaking seats, stuff like that. So in hindsight, we probably made the correct decision. It may have been a bit dicey. I actually have that literal poster from Tinley Park, Illinois. I have that poster. I own that.
Wow.
That is awesome that
Okay.
you found that.
But I mean,
That's the reason.
think about the story, think
Yeah.
about the experience your mom could have had.
Yeah, it's true.
Did your mom like live?
Yeah, I think uh, she was a great trooper, we could say. She did it because it was the thing that Justin, my brother, and I loved most, going to these concerts. So it was more my dad would take us to the wrestling, and my mom would take us to most of the concerts. Parented incredibly well in these ways. But yeah, I think she liked live. It was pretty palatable, and I enjoyed it at the time. And going there and being at an outdoor venue like that felt even more magical than being in, like, a cold, lifeless, personality devoid arena. And so Merriweather, just it's wood, like literal wood in the venue, but it was a wooded area, especially at the time. And there was something just so magical about being there and seeing live music. And after that, then it was like concerts became the lifeblood of my existence. It was, what's the next show I'm going to? And that was the thing I was always most looking forward to. And since then, I've seen literally thousands and thousands of live music performances.
Wow. Okay, so first of all, before we move on, I think the next time Rage Against the Machine comes to your city, you gotta take your mom.
Ooh, Justin and I went. It was them last summer and Run the Jewels. And still, I mean, again, Rage hasn't put out a song in over 20 years. And yet their performance felt as urgent and contemporary and vital as anything I've seen. Like, it was amazing. Yeah, I guess it's rude that we didn't invite our mom.
I mean, there's always next time, or the next time Wu-Tang shows up too. I think she'll.
Speaking of, whoa, she just texted me. Talk about serendipity.
Okay, so you had this incredible experience, and then at what point did it sort of transition to you wanting to be a musician yourself?
Oh, it was already there. I started taking guitar lessons, I think I was maybe 9 or 10. It's like 4th, 5th grade. The guitar teacher just taught me Smells Like Teen Spirit on lesson 1, because I kind of knew Nirvana, but that was my way into Nirvana. It was like, hey, you can play Nirvana. And that's like, I didn't really play video games that much as a kid. I didn't play. I did a bit of sports, but as I was getting into like middle school, I was less interested in that stuff. Like, my way of socializing at that early age and throughout my life has been to play music, like play band with other people. So that's all I ever wanted to do. And it took me a little while. It wasn't until age 17 that I was playing like professional gigs, like where people paid, bought tickets for it. Up until that point, it was like, school stuff, my uncle's Italian ice shop, shit like that. So it took me a little bit of time. My brother got there first, kind of professional gigging in high school. But yeah, that had, at that, like, by the time I saw Bush, it was like, fuck, this is what I want to be a part of.
I want to get married up there someday.
That was always the goal. That was always the goal.
Amazing.
Yeah. I'm curious for you with live music. Does a first concert come to mind?
Yeah. So I guess my first show, because like I never went to live events for anything, honestly. Like,
not even wrestling.
Like, as big of a wrestling fan as I was, it always felt like it was such a barrier of entry. Like, we just didn't spend a whole lot of money on like that sort of stuff in my house. So like, even buying pay-per-views felt like something I would never be able to ask for. Much less like, like paying money for a concert ticket and then trying to make my way downtown to go to one. So it wasn't until one day where like I just said, like, I'm old enough that I could take the bus down myself now, and I have a bit of pocket change, so why can't I just do this? So I think it was probably going to like wrestling events first. That kind
Mm.
of broke that seal. So like I'd go to wrestling events and I'd learn like that I could get cheaper tickets by waiting until the show started so that I could buy from a scalper.
Ooh, look at you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was all about. I was a very frugal kid. So then I decided to do the same when Blur were coming into town, and I
Mm.
decided to go downtown myself to see them.
What kind of venue are we talking about?
This was the Cool House. It was like a big sort of cavernous box that, I guess I don't know, like 1,000 people, maybe
So all
something like
like
that.
general admission standing.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
And how old were you?
Oh man, I probably was, I don't know, I was probably like 18, 17, something like
Okay, so a
that.
bit older, and you went with a buddy.
No, I went by myself.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. I was, yeah, I was told. I don't know. That never bothered me at all, especially
That's
because like
cool.
it's such a personal to me like experience, and like I'm there to watch somebody else, not necessarily talk to somebody anyway, right?
Right, but if
So,
if you had never been before to a concert, let alone that specific venue,
mhm,
and it's general admission standing, and
mhm.
it's a rock show, and like Blur, it's Brit rock, but like song two goes kind of hard, so there's people probably moshing and stuff like that. I could like maybe as a 17-year-old myself, if I had never done that, I might feel a bit nervous to do that alone.
I guess I didn't even know what moshing was at that point, or at
Mm,
least I didn't know what to expect. So like I just decided to go and saw them, and I just remember like being in the venue and being like, "Wow, I'm seeing this." Like it was a bit of like I guess stars strickenness,
mm,
where like like these people you've seen on TV your whole life now are suddenly in the flesh, and you're not that far from them because like the entrance was near the side, right?
mm.
And you know how like everybody like when you're at a concert the sort of formation is almost like a half oval,
Yeah.
right? Where like, everybody likes to like get more of the center view, center
Yep.
sort of like audio everything. But like if you sneak to the side, like you're kind of close. It's just the sound is kind of fucked up.
Yep.
But at that point I was like, wow, like I feel like I'm really close right now.
Mm,
And yeah, I bought a sculpt ticket from like this guy that I actually knew from like my neighborhood from
mm.
way back. Anyway, it was $30. It was it kind of ripped me off, but it's it's okay.
Yeah, you're talking about saving money. I was the high school scalper. I was not like in it to lose money.
Right, right. You're in it to make money.
Yes.
Understood. Anyway, so I mean, I had a great time. I don't think it was as powerful or like an as an all encompassing experience as what you might have had, but for me, it was now sort of like an extension of like my interest in this hobby.
Yeah. But was Blur a band that you loved?
Yeah, at the time. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I like it's not like so it's weird. Like for me to consider me loving a band, I feel like I have to know their entire discography and I don't. Like
Mm,
I love specific albums, I love specific songs, but I'm not like into their entire discography. But
yeah.
it was enough that I was interested in going, and I had a really great time. So from that point on, I guess I just started to go to shows. I started to listen to more music, and I
Mm,
started to actually connect sort of like my interest in this thing just strictly from being at home listening down, recording songs off the radio to now seeing these bands in person. But to be quite honest with you, like the live experience was never like the first thing for me. Like
mm,
for me, it's always like listening to the record and listening to the record by myself,
mm.
on my headphones. Like it's great to see it live, but it was like to me that was a supplement more than like the main thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess if I had to choose the live experiences, and we talked about this recently on one of these episodes. I think you were kind of asking me, and I was saying that in my own career as a musician, making the albums, which I love that, but that was more so that to get onto a stage to play the songs. The live was where the action was mostly
Hmm.
for me. So then was there obviously I know this Spice Girls album kind of was a thing, but was there a first album that really spoke to you where it felt like
Yeah.
it was
It's
yours?
about me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so I guess I graduated rather quick from the Spice Girls because like my next album was this compilation album from
Mm,
in Toronto in Canada that we had from the TV channel called Big Shiny Tunes. John would know all about this.
mm,
And then one of the songs on it was like more of like sort of like an alt rock compilation, and
mm.
one of the songs was Paranoid Android on it,
Yes,
and that
yes.
became my third album that I bought. It was OK Computer. So
Oh
I
wow.
made the leap from Spice Girls to OK Computer pretty quickly,
What was the
and
second album?
that compilation.
Oh, yeah, you literally just said that.
Yeah,
Okay, so
yeah,
OK Computer. So
yeah.
we're talking like 97 ish.
Mhm.
Uh, and it was the whole album,
Yeah.
or it was just so the whole album spoke to you. It
I mean,
wasn't just
Paranoid Android first and foremost was just incredible,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And it was like nothing else on that compilation, and I just wanted more of that.
Mm,
And it was so like different and so weird, and full of like so many little intricacies that I just completely did not understand at that age.
mm,
Probably still don't completely right now. But I knew I wanted more of it. And specifically I was really into guitars at the time and I still am. And Johnny Greenwood soloing in many parts of the album I thought
yeah.
were amazing. Um, but as far as like ownership, I got one of those BM, like I don't know if you have Columbia House. You do, right? You know the whole
That was a thing, like the penny a CD, or
yeah,
I never engaged with that. It
I
just
did.
always felt like
A
a thing
scam?
that yes, it just yeah.
I don't know if it was so much or not. Like ultimately I feel like I saved money, but I kind of split it with a friend and
Mm,
like we each chose a bunch of CDs and among the CDs I chose was the Blue Album by Weezer.
mm,
And that was like I think a really great type of like sound and style for my age at the time because it was kinda nerdy, it was but, like, it was, like, rock, and, it had great solos
mm.
and, like, great songs, so that was, like, the type of thing I probably connected with the most at the time, to the point where, like, my friends and I started to connect with it because I would introduce it to them, and then we would just start covering the songs,
Oh, cool.
and I know all those songs pretty intimately as a result.
Covering them meaning
Playing them.
like you were playing what?
I played bass, but I played guitar as well.
Okay.
Mhm.
How did that come into your life? Like for me, it was,
Right.
I guess either my mom suggested or asked, or Justin and I asked, but he and I started guitar lessons at the same time, and it was just
Mm.
like we took piano lessons. I was maybe kindergarten,
Yeah.
and I took to it, but I just wasn't that into it. And then
Because
like
what are they teaching you? You know, like there's songs that you probably don't like all that much.
exactly, so it's oh well, I love Bush, and this is guitar rock, so let me learn how to do that.
Right. They're not
So
teaching you Machine Head on piano.
no, I learned the main song I learned on piano was Aladdin, a whole new world.
Right. Of
Yes,
course.
which was
Yeah.
great.
That's the
But
thing, like I think some kids take to like music lessons really well, but I've always found like I took music lessons, I was like presented it my whole entire life and I didn't like any of it.
mm,
It wasn't until like I discovered music myself and I wanted to play the songs that I listened to that I really got into it.
yeah.
So that's yeah. Anyway,
Did you have
so
a drummer friend?
yeah, I did. I did.
Oh,
So I was friends with this guy. In fact, like he's my wrestling friend.
mm,
And honestly, like I was just this was a very solitary sort of interest of mine. I didn't expect anybody in my school to be into this stuff because I grew up sort of like in an Asian neighborhood
mm,
and no Asians were listening to Weezer or Radiohead or anything like that.
mm.
So I didn't really
Sorry, what were they listening to?
I don't know, man. Rap, a lot of hip hop.
Okay.
I guess, um, yeah, more poppy stuff, but like, yeah, this it wasn't really sort of a rock crowd, and so I I was it was just a very solitary thing until one day I had some so this friend who was a wrestling friend of mine, he had another friend who started a band out in Vancouver, and he started playing the songs, and that influenced him to buy a drum kit,
Mm,
and then they needed a drum or a bassist, and my brothers happened, like I said, they happen to have a lot of gear, and I had taken some guitar courses myself just as a personal interest,
mm.
and they just asked me, and I joined, and they all and it was just like something we did over the summer,
Mm.
several summers, and it was just the most fun I've ever had in my life.
That's awesome. Also, the bands you're talking about, it reminds me just how influential MTV as means of distribution, but music video as just the product was just like Paranoid Android. It wasn't so much the song for me, it was the video that initially hooked me, because it's a weird song with and like 6-7 minutes maybe, jumping from piece to piece, but it was the video that held my attention and helped me fall in love with the song. I think Have the Patience, and same with Buddy Holly, just the novelty of just whatever technologically they made that happen with Happy Days was interesting to me.
Agree. I totally agree. I mean, especially when you're young, I found my interest in music was very much led by the visual component of it, and that might be MTV, that might be something else. Like hearing a song on a movie soundtrack, and you think about the scene from the movie when you're listening to the song.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Did you have MTV or as much music?
It was much music. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, same thing. But I totally agree. Like sometimes like a song sucks, but the video is good and you end up liking the song. You know what I mean? And sometimes I guess the song is good, but the video sucks. And you end up liking the song a bit less.
Perhaps.
At least I did back then.
Yeah.
Maybe not as much now.
Yeah. So you bring up Radiohead, I'll mention them now. And I guess to be brief, just as far as like the Bush was the one. And then I had this whole thing with Creed. And in a non-ironic way, I love that they're like a thing again. Like, good for them.
Are they?
Oh, very much so. They Higher was like a theme song of whatever Texas baseball team won the World Series recently, and they're reuniting, I think, for the first time in over a decade, and the tour is selling very, very well. And awesome. At least, I mean, obviously algorithms do what algorithms do, but all I see like on Instagram are just videos like of Creed songs in meme form. It's delightful. But I really fucked with that band, that their first album, My Own Prison, and as emo as it sounds, I was dealing with a lot of anxiety and depressive symptoms in like 7th, 8th grade when that album came out, and I got to see them at a club. And then later that same year, they blew up, and I was seeing them headline Merriweather. But I really connected with, there we go. Yeah, that is pinnacle butt rock right there. My personality like kind of was shaped around this fucking band. I had a whole wall in my room of just Creed pictures and posters. It was wow. It was very questionable.
So let me ask you. I mean, to you, to you, this is a great band, right? Do you still feel that way?
Yeah, I do. And like, I'm trying to not be some like hipster elitist here. Like, is Creed a great band? Like, yeah, they're tight as fuck. They have like many songs that have touched millions of people. Like, they perform well live. Yeah, Creed's a great band.
And there's no disagreement from me about that. But how did it make you feel when the world was starting to treat Creed like sort of like a joke?
Oh, it was all. Oh no, okay. So I thought you were going somewhere else. I think when I was kind of oblivious to it and didn't get it, and as a Jew, like, I didn't even pick up on any of these Christian like undertones at the time, so that was never like a. But then I started thinking like, well, why do these other kids? Why do they make fun of Creed? But it was weird because it was like they were also getting more and more popular. Like I said, within one calendar year, I see them at a club with maybe 800 people. And then the end of the year, I'm seeing them at an amphitheater with maybe 15,000 people. So there definitely was that part of me feeling like, my band is getting too popular. And part of me was rejecting it. Also, by the time the second album, Human Clay, came out with Higher as the lead single, I was into it, but a lot less into it. But I think that was a lot of just my music taste changing. And I think when we're younger, we try on different shit. We try on different friend groups or wardrobe or tastes in genres of entertainment. So it didn't take too long for the Creed aesthetic, we could say, to feel kind of lame to me. And then I was like, oh, 311, that's the hot shit. Now I'm 16 and got my first car with a 6 CD changer in the trunk, and all 6 CDs are 311 CDs.
But isn't it kind of sad, Jordan, that like we can all love something, but at the moment we kind of realize other people don't like it, especially when we're young. I mean, the feeling of that peer pressure, kind of tainting, our enjoyment of something is kind of shitty, right?
Yeah, yeah. And so part of that is our desire to fit in, or to be, included or respected. But for me, it was weird because like I felt like I was into Creed when no one knew who they were, and then as soon as everyone figured out who they were, I was kind of like, they're not cool anymore. So I was kind of that shithead from that perspective.
Right. Adding to it.
But yeah, 311, that became a thing for a while. Like I was super into like their musicianship, the positivity. That was, I guess, the first band where they really had an emphasis on the community element.
Right.
And that was really interesting to me. And that's become like foundational to everything I've done, including this podcast project. Like this only works if there's community around it, for me at least. And that got really interesting. But then everything opened up. You remember the band The Used?
Oh yeah.
That to me was like a turning point, because that was my way in to like punk rock and emo or screamo and post-hardcore and hardcore, and like that whole scene.
You
That
dye your
felt
hair black?
no, not. I mean, my hair has always been dark. Some of what I was doing was like I was like red
You ever wore makeup?
splotches. The ICP makeup, of course, we've all done that, obviously. But no, I never did the eyeliner or anything like that, or the guy liner that some of my bandmates or friends did at the time. But say again.
Studded belt.
Yes, the white studded belt. So okay, so this was me like 11th grade into like early college. Like The Used was my way in. They were on a major label, but they kind of had the like ethos of underground DIY punk rock, and the music spoke to me, and like in a way that nothing had before. What's up, Corey? Yes, the white studded belt, the oversized Dickie shorts, the like skateboard company like Hurley Etnies tight t-shirt from Goodwill, and like the sideways cap. And then the week I graduated from high school, my dad took me to get the lip ring, and that was kind of the look.
Lip ring like elevates you, certainly gives you
that was
way more cred than black hair, I think.
Yes, that was, it wasn't quite tattoo commitment, but it was like I'm willing to stick a hole in my mouth and like be seen publicly with that. So that was kind of that Warped Tour scene was from like 2002 for the next handful of years, and that's when I started having success in my own bands. Those were the types of music communities that we were gigging with. It was either hardcore bands or pop punk bands we were playing with, and that's where I really developed a sense of self, we could say,
and community, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Corey has I'm sure a lot to say about this, so why don't at this point we bring in some of our listeners, including Corey. What do you have to say? Did you have a white studded belt?
I had a black studded belt, but I hung out with a lot of white studded belt kids for sure.
Yeah, we meant well, Corey.
Yeah, no, the later half of the 2000s, it was a lot of like skinny black jeans, white studded belt, neon green, like cartoon monster merch, and like a youth large t-shirt on a person who usually wears a medium, and like raccoon tail hair. And that was it,
Raccoon tail hair.
Yeah, see, you just search "scene kid hair" and you'll know exactly exactly what I'm talking about.
Corey, did you have a? I know you're a bit younger than us, but did you have a MySpace name that you went by?
I didn't have a MySpace name. It was just like I just used my I think my AIM username, which was Calculating Infinity, named after the Dillinger Escape Plan album.
Yes.
Very good. Yeah. So I have a question for both you guys. In Wai, I think both of you kind of answered the first part of it, which was what was the first album you bought. But I guess this is the hardest question and also the easiest question to ask anyone who's just like deep into music. And that's what's your favorite album?
Ooh. Okay, so I was working to this. I did the whole used and pop punk kind of screamo scene music thing. Around 2006, that was becoming less interesting to me because those neon bands were kind of. It felt like this is the hair metal of that genre, and so that's when I really got deep into Radiohead. So I think it's on this side. No, I think it's this side. I got this Kid A tattoo.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and Kid A.
Let's see it again. Let's see it again, Jordan.
Okay,
Let's see it close up.
That was the first time I committed to a tattoo.
Wow.
There we go.
I used to draw that bear all the time on every desk in my school.
Amazing. So here's why Kid A, and is that my favorite album of all time? Honestly, I don't know if I can answer that, but that's the one that I have like branded on my literal body. And so what I love, the music I love, obviously, but it's more about the statement of that album. You know, the first album with Creep, this, who would have predicted that that would have done so well? And then they follow up with The Bends, which was this like quintessential like Brit pop album that did not sound like Creep. It wasn't like, let's just do an album of Creep. And so I respected that. And then they come out with OK Computer at a time when their label was hoping they would be essentially what Coldplay became. Like leading up to OK Computer, they were, I think they played Merriweather, in fact, but they were supporting Alanis Morissette and amphitheaters in North America. So like that was the hope for Radiohead that they would.
It was like songs like High and Dry and like
My Iron Lung.
Yeah, like Fake Plastic Trees, like that sort of
more certainly more digestible pop rock than OK Computer, especially with Paranoid Android as a lead single. And so OK Computer was like, you know what, we're going to do what we want to do and introduce electronic elements and a 7-minute lead single with an animated video. Like they had their own vision and they weren't going to compromise, so it seemed. And that worked really fucking well. Like that blew them up, especially in America. America did not get that into the Bends. And then how do they follow it up with an album, Kid A, that does not have much guitar, does not have much like vocal hook melody or choruses, and dare I say, like that propelled them even further to greater heights.
It's their love letter to Aphex Twin. It's their love letter to all the Warp Records bands, Square Pusher, Autechre, whatever. You could go down the list of all of those like experimental electronic acts of the late 90s. Like that was their direct influence on that album. And that's not the most like accessible kind of music you present to people.
Correct. And that was, it almost felt like with OK Computer, they were like, no, we're going to do what we want to do. And then they got bigger. And then on Kid A is like, we're going to double down and be more difficult. And I respect the hell out of that. And that's part of what I like. That's inspirational to me, to be quite honest. Like as when I'm making decisions in life, that was part of me going to graduate school to be amongst psychology students and be like, no, I'm going to lead with being a musician here, even though that may be a more arduous road for me, or might feel thornier or more difficult or circuitous to my parents or to professors or to whomever. Is like, no, I'm gonna follow my vision, and I would trust that when Radiohead puts out a Kid A, that was a genuine vision that they had, and they certainly weren't doing it because they thought, well, this will play well with radio programmers and MTV at the time. So I just respect the hell out of artists like that, and not consumerists playing artists. And so like Kid A would be my answer, Corey?
I guess like for me, when I think about this question, I typically think more about like eras. Like different parts of my life I have different favorite albums, right?
Yeah.
I also feel like maybe I was most connected to just my discovery of music. Like I listen to music now, but I more so listen to like singles and just like, you know, like greatest hits and things like that. And playlists is what I do not now. I don't really get involved into like the feeling of like completely consuming an album the way that I did back when I was younger, and like, you know, going on message boards talking to death about, you know, this track, this song, and all that. So I don't really think about favorite albums these days, but if I had to pick like when I was most into an album my entire life, probably it'd be Interpol and Turn on the Bright Lights. For
I
one
just
thing,
saw
it
them
was
last month or
oh
2
no
months
way,
ago. Yeah, they
Yeah.
were opening for the Smashing Pumpkins.
Ooh, that's a good show.
cool, it's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, but like for me, that came at a time when you know, I was just starting to play in bands and I was just kind of discovering instruments, and that's a particular album where every instrument to me really stands out, in particular the bass playing, and that was another album that I just started to I learned to play the bass by basically, you know, playing those bass lines, and
Wow.
it's incredibly like interestingly layered. I found every song to me offered something unique, just musically. And again, 10 songs, I think, you know, and every one of them was really, really amazing and special. So if I had to pick the what I've been most connected to my entire life, might be that one. What about you, Corey? Curious.
Yeah. So it's fun. So I asked this question because I've been working all year on a little pet project of mine, which is I'm making a list of my 100 favorite albums, putting them in order,
Whoa.
and then I'm going to write a little blurb about them. I did it with my 100 favorite songs a couple years ago, and it was a really interesting exercise, and I wanted to do it again because for me, music is and kind of going to what you said, Way, is that you can think of an album like defining a particular era of your life, and in a way, this 100 album list for me is very much almost like writing my own biography, just because like the way I measure time almost is with music. I have a Last FM account. I downloaded my data just to have it. And like, I can look at the first instance of me listening to some of my favorite albums of all time. And that's a wild thing. And I can time warp myself to exactly that moment. And as far as my favorite album, I mean, it's a toss up between four, but if the one that immediately comes to mind is the fourth album by a group called Boards of Canada. They're an electronic duo from Scotland, and the album's called The Campfire Head Phase. It recently just turned, I think, 20 years old. It's an album that, and I actually described this to my therapist. That album is as integral to me as like air. Like I listened to this album and it's like second nature. I know this album like the back of my hand, like the topography of like my fingertips. It's something I don't think I've gone a day without listening to it, or at
Wow.
least some of the
Wow.
songs. It has some of my favorite musical moments in a song. It has perfect sequencing. Even the interlude tracks are among the best interlude tracks from any artist I've ever heard. And it's considered their weird album because they incorporated guitars on it as opposed to just being fully electronic. I think about this album all the time. It's perfect. I can go on and on for hours about it. It is, in my opinion, one of the greatest pieces of music ever, like committed to wax or a CD or an MP3.
Cool. I've always been familiar with the name, but I'll check that out. Real quick, first concert, and what was the number one song on that list?
First concert was the Spice Girls.
Amazing. Who opened?
I don't remember. We got there kind of late, And I'll be honest with you, the only reason I went was to kill time because my parents were coming home with the video game Diddy Kong Racing, and I really wanted to play it, but I needed to kill time. So I figured I would go see some celebrities whose songs I knew. When I was really like trying to protect my cred, I would say my first concert, which was really my second concert, was Velvet Revolver, which is the
Oh my God.
super group of Scott Weiland from Stone Temple Pilots and a bunch of the members of Guns N'
Slash.
Roses.
Yeah.
And the opening act for that concert was Hoobastank.
Yes, I've seen Hoobastank many a time.
Yeah, and this was like coming right off of The Reason also, and people were not into Hoobastank.
Yeah, that is a weird. I saw them a bunch on the first album. They were they toured a lot supporting Incubus, and I went to that tour a handful of times. But I think on The Reason, I only saw them once at 930 Club in DC, and it was odd. It was like a co-headline with Alien Ant Farm.
Oh,
but
okay.
That made a lot more sense than supporting Velvet Revolver.
Yeah. And kind of to Wai's point, it was a cool concert, but it's not necessarily something that I would say was like super impactful on me. I thought it was cool. Like I was seeing Slash. They did a couple Guns N' Roses songs. They did a couple Stone Temple Pilots songs, but it's not necessarily anything I would consider sort of like the seminal moment in my life. That happened a week later when I went to the Hammerstein Ballroom to see Nine Inch Nails and the Dresden Dolls. And
that's amazing.
That was legitimate. Like, so Wai was talking about starstruck, and for me, like at this point in my life, I don't necessarily get starstruck by many like musicians. It's still that way for me with Trent Reznor. Yeah. He is the most probably the most impactful pop culture figure on my life. The idea that you can make that kind of music by yourself melted my fucking brain when I was like 14, when I first heard Nine Inch Nails.
That's awesome. And a historic venue to see such a band.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Very cool. And what was the number one song on that list?
For the Spice Girls?
No. You said you made like a list of your top 100 songs.
Oh, my top 100 songs. So the top song on that list was Voyager by Daft Punk.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I know how that one goes just by name.
It is an instrumental song in the middle of Discovery. It's like track 8, I think. It's instrumental. It's very much like kind of got the hallmark French house low pass filter over the bass in it. It sounds like a distant party. I forever associate it with driving over the Whitestone Bridge on my way back to my home from college and just seeing the skyline of Manhattan lit up. And it hits right when the bridge happens, and it's got this kind of angelic harp sound. It's perfect. That's like a perfect song. Yeah, and a great album too.
It's a classic album. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Corey. Really appreciate your thoughts as always on the Wellness Boss Lady, especially for a topic like this. So let's give a chance to some of the other callers. Thank you as always, Corey. Talk to you hopefully next week or next month, I should say. Let's go up next to Hansi. Hey, Hansi, welcome to the show.
What's going on? Can you hear me?
Hey, yeah, what's up, Hansi?
What's going on?
Jordan, congrats on your engagement, man.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that.
Yeah, man. No, I feel I love music, but like I'm not like the way you guys are discussing it. It's like because I never grew up in like taking in albums, and I kind of always felt left out in that because I used to assume music was just what you heard on the radio. I didn't even know these people had like albums. I just thought like if you had one song on the radio, that was like the song that we know you from, right? So I started hanging out with people that used to listen to hip hop and rock and all that kind of stuff, alternative and all that kind of stuff. And I would like because I was only obsessed with wrestling, unfortunately. What's it called? I would hate on rap music and rock music because people were hating on wrestling. So I would make generalizations about it. But then like hip hop had like wrestling connection where you have like artists making mention to wrestling and even though like 20 years ago, like I like socially conscious stuff, I knew that like the edgelord stuff was like what like everyone liked like in the mainstream kind of. So I had to pretend like I was into like just the edgelord stuff, even though like in my house I'd be like crying to like Ghostface and all my that song with Mary J. Blige. All I
Oh,
got
yeah.
is you, whatever. Yeah, that song is probably my favorite hip hop song ever, and I always like sit back when I'm like reflecting on stuff, whatever. But like, yeah, I just started getting into it when like Napster came out, and I started downloading like different like way you'd appreciate this because like I was just new to hip hop, right? You know that artist Killer Priest?
Yes.
Was it called because I was new to it? I was like, hey, I'm downloading old Wu-Tang songs. Have you guys ever heard of that rapper, Priest Killer? And then my friends would break down laughing, like, dude, that'd be such an awful name for a rapper, Priest Killer, right?
I mean, is Killer Priest that much better?
I mean, I guess
Ghostface
like
Killer.
I mean, I guess you if you're a priest, you might as well be a killer priest rather than somebody being somebody that just specializes in killing priests. I guess you can like kind of do it that way. But like I don't know, I always loved music. And the thing is like I would listen to because like I didn't have any older brothers or anything like that, right? I had older sisters. So I would go by what they were putting on. They would put on like some like techno dance music, like the house music and type of stuff like that, Indian music. So like for like a good portion of my childhood while everyone was listening to Wu-Tang, I would be like listening to Indian movie soundtracks, man. Like I feel so like there's one story where I was trying to compete with my sister and buying all these Indian movie soundtracks, and then it was in Pakistan. I went to the store and I didn't know how to speak my own language properly. But what I meant to say was my sister has this album, but what I ended up saying in English was I have a sister. And the guy's like, "What the?" He's looking at me like that, you know what I mean? But I don't know. I just I guess hip hop was easier for me because during a time, I guess like what my first album was because I loved that song by Biggie and Faith Evans no, not Biggie, Puff Daddy. I'll be I'll be waiting, I'll be loving you, whatever, and all that kind of
I'll
stuff.
be missing you. Yeah.
Obviously, yes, I totally forgot the song, man. So, Diddy isn't like the most popular guy right now to talk about, really,
Yeah,
right?
true.
But my sisters bought me, yeah, no way, yeah, they bought me that album for my birthday, and it kind of like I was already diving a little bit into hip hop. The Tupac death got me curious, and I felt like to like save me time is like hip hop sample a lot of like old like soul songs and R&B songs from the past or rock songs. So I'd find myself listening to hip hop, but I also wanted to get into other music by the samples that I was listening to from it because I'm always into like, oh, I want to hear the original version of the song and all that kind of stuff. But I mainly became like a hip hop guy more so than like even though I like all music and the music you're gonna talk about, like I just entered some of the songs that you're gonna talking about, and I'm like, yeah, I remember this from the '90s and all that kind of stuff. I remember this watching much music and all that kind of stuff. I didn't really know if I knew that there was gonna be all these nerdy topics about music. I would have like gotten into it a lot more than I did. But I just, from a personal standpoint, I got into hip hop because it felt like one of the only art forms when I started really getting into it was when like there was a lot of hatred for Muslims during 9/11, and I felt like hip hop was one of the like the ones that the guys I was listening to were not being reactionary, and they were kind of giving you a history lesson of what the U.S. has done and who have they backed and all that kind of stuff. So that's why I kind of have like been more into hip hop more than anything else, even though I like other music.
That's interesting.
Very much so. Well, I'll say like for the people in my class, No Way Out by Puff Daddy and the Family certainly was like a big gateway into just their discovery of music, and it was for me too. It was one of the albums I got from the Columbia House thing, and I think it's a classic, man. It's
I do,
it's got
yeah.
amazing songs on it, and then like, but it didn't really prepare me for like um I guess some of the vulgarity I would hear on other albums in the genre. Like I think I got DMX after like It's Dark as and Hell is Hot. And I remember like the experience of listening to that in my room, my childhood bedroom, and like all this cussing just started to fill my home, and I just immediately ran over to like the stereo to turn it down, just because my parents were just like not used to it. I mean, I was really into it, but like it was just not something I had brought into the house. But as a gateway, I feel like this No Way Out album, it was sort of like a good middle ground between like pop radio and I guess the genre.
I would say that album, and if it wasn't that album that was a gateway for a lot of people, I think The Chronic 2 was another gateway album. And I'll say, because I didn't like Eminem when he first came, like I didn't like his flow of like the Big Bird flow, and I just thought, like, you know what I mean, like I'm like, oh, this guy's like a try hard guy. And then once The Chronic came out, and I heard that, I was like the thing is like, being a minority, I could relate to black people on certain things, but because I felt like black people were like the coolest of cool, and like it seemed like their issues were like a lot more like, like gang violence, from what I can tell on the rap, right? It felt like Eminem was the one that I could relate to, because he felt like, and like, I'm not a white guy who's like, hating his parents, but like I'm a nerd, and Eminem was a nerd, so I felt like, well, I guess I can relate to a nerd basically who has anger issues about, his upbringing, and, and not being liked by women and all that kind of stuff. Even though I thought that, like, even back then, like, I was listening to Marshall Mathers LP, and I'm like, how is this, like, all the shit that Eminem is talking, how is this guy gonna be alive? This guy, like, talks the most shit out of everyone, and it just mesmerizing to me to hear somebody just talk that reckless. Like, I understand hating your mother, but like writing a song about sexually assaulting your mother and your girlfriend, you know what I mean? It's like, wow, this is crazy. So me personally, I've always liked Eminem's introspective stuff. Like, even though, but the thing is, like, if you're a fan of somebody, I thought you had to be a fan of every single thing they do. But I always like, that's why when people talk about Eminem show or Marshall Mathers LP, I'll always prefer Eminem show, because I feel like I feel like that album was more introspective, and he wasn't trying to be an over the top gimmick. I always felt like the Marshall Mathers LP, like, even though I liked the lyrical content and all that, I felt it was like a way too try hard even back then. But like, I just became more of an Eminem fan as I went on, and I always kind of like went by because I was late to getting in. If Eminem name dropped his top 10 favorite rappers on a song, I'm like, well, now I gotta consider Andre 3000 and Corrupt and Jadakiss as these top lyricist guys, and then maybe listen to them more, basically, if that makes sense.
Makes total sense. Absolutely. I find it so interesting how you kind of have to find the personality of artists that maybe you fit with the most, or maybe it just happens to connect with you when you're listening to it. And I think it's also awesome that you managed to, I guess, find that through Eminem and specific portions of Eminem. But you don't. I disagree with the idea that you have to like every song by an artist.
Yeah, no,
Excuse me. Excuse me. Sorry, everybody. Jordan's out of here too because he lost his audio. Apologies. But I thought I muted myself. Sorry.
It's all good, man.
But I disagree with the idea that you have to like every song, in order to enjoy somebody. Like, I would say the majority, maybe. If you like the majority or even one specific album, that's enough to qualify.
No, I understand that. Yeah, the thing is like a lot of rappers. Like, I don't know if you remember when Kanye West's first album came out, right? If you're a mixtape connoisseur, because I was like a mixtape guy, like during the 2000s, especially when it was easy to download and all that. Whenever artists like Eminem would be good at like only releasing like one or two songs that would make it on his album, unless it was like a big leak. But I remember Kanye West, like from 2002 to like his album release, he had like 10, 11 songs that were on mixtapes that by the time his album came out, I found myself not liking the album, even though as an album, it's pretty good, right? But I also felt like the mixtape scene also kind of convoluted my enjoyment of albums, because a lot of these songs would be played out by the time the album came out, and a lot of the songs would be on mixtapes. I don't know if you're ever like a consumer of the mixtape era as well, because that
a little.
Were you into the G Unit mixtape? Because I felt like
no. I was into the games mixtapes,
Me
like
too.
the ones where he would diss G Unit. I was never into G Unit, but like I really paid attention when the game was like feuding with them, and he did like 300 bars and running. Remember that?
Yeah, dude. I always thought that the game as a rapper was better than 50 Cent, even though 50 Cent's a better hit maker. And I do think people downplay how good 50 Cent can rap. I think because of the shooting in the mouth, it kind of held him back a little bit from doing it. But when
It also wasn't as commercially successful as like when he did like started doing Candy Shop and shit like that, right?
Yeah, no. I compare it to an Attitude Era star, where like I felt like the reason why he maintained popularity is like most artists in the '90s, and and other artists of the eras, when they become mainstream, they don't like cater to their hardcore base, right? And I felt like 50 Cent, even though he was like on top of the world mainstream wise, he was still putting out like mixtapes that cater to his original base, which I always thought that the mixtapes were a lot better than his actual like if you listen to a G-Unit album compilation album, it's better that it's a lot worse than the mixtapes albums that they're putting out, because they would be putting out like non-stop good stuff, like the whole roster basically, you know what I mean? I felt like that era of mixtapes between Dipset, between the Locks, Lil Wayne started doing the mixtape. Lil Wayne and Gucci Man took what 50 Cent created with the mixtapes, and then there would be guys like Joe Budden, who I would like because they're exclusively mixtape rappers, like the indie, like Joe Budden's like a Chris Hero to me. You know what I mean? Where he didn't main event WrestleMania, but he's still like a revered lyricist around the world.
I find it so incredibly fascinating, exactly what you mentioned. I mean, in many ways, it's sort of like the independent wrestling scene, isn't it? Right? Like I'm talking about mixtapes. It's how you build your brand, I suppose, on the underground, so that there's enough interest in seeing maybe a major release from somebody. It's how you feature a new act. It's how you maybe even get your chops up and get your reps in, so that you can, I don't know, be able to handle a bigger stage, for instance. I don't know many other genres that have that sort of thing, that hip hop does. So what? Are mixtapes not a thing anymore?
No. I mean, they are, but I feel like because streaming in general has taken over, that you might as well just put the mixtape on a streaming service, right?
Right.
But I do miss that. I gotta say that did help my fandom a lot more, being an internet fan and being on the internet, because I was like listening to like for example, because I didn't listen to like Jay-Z when he first came out. I would be revisiting, like, there'd be mixtapes of like old Jay-Z verses, or compilation of the best diss songs throughout the history. Like, there'd be interesting stuff going on, or different producers coming up with different beats to make. Do you remember those prize fighter remixes from Napster, where they take verses from other songs and put them over like a popular beat? I always found those type of things interesting, basically. You know what I mean?
Have you ever listened to Tupac Rap Phenomenon?
Tupac Rap Phenomenon.
Yeah. So like so this is not that big of a deal anymore, because like
That's
YouTube
familiar.
has plenty of this stuff, but like this would be like them taking like Tupac verses and putting them over like Biggie beats and just modern beats. And at the time I thought it was amazing. Like Chris Rock actually recommended this. That's how I learned about it. But now these days, like you go on the internet, you'll find a billion of these things, including AI versions of like Biggie rapping "Hit 'Em Up," which is amazing and awful at the same time. But Hansi, thank you so much for the call.
Before I go, I just want to say again, congratulations to Jordan on his engagement. And also, listen, man, I apologize if I was going on a little bit too much, whatever. But I didn't get Jordan to chime in, whatever. But I enjoy the music conversation, because I like hearing different people and how they come up with music, and it took me back to my days of just watching much music. So I appreciate the topic. You know what I mean? It's good to have a topic that I didn't come on and depress all of you guys with the last time I called in. You know what I mean? So thank you for having me on, man. Peace
never feel bad about that, and it's never the case. So thank you as always, Hansi. All right, let's go up next to Johnny. Thank you for waiting so patiently, Johnny. How you doing?
Hey,
Good.
Johnny.
How are you guys doing?
Hey, welcome.
Doing good.
Welcome back.
Congratulations, Jordan. It's going to be a grand adventure.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So, kind of going back to Corey's point about music and eras. Did you guys ever find yourselves like in a block of time where you only just listen to like just one genre and like nothing else? The reason why
Totally.
I asked that is like I grew up as a much music kid too. It was like Billy Talent that set it all off.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
then because of Billy Talent, I discovered Alexis on Fire, discovered Death from Above.
Yeah.
And then because of Death from Above, I just listened to house music because of Mastercraft and like that.
I followed that same track, dude.
Oh man. Well, I know you were like a Death from Above forum dude once upon a time.
I was a Mastercraft forum guy too.
Yeah,
were you on the forums?
I was on those forums.
Oh my god! Wow,
And
amazing.
because of that, it was like the whole Bloghouse era of like hype machines. That's how I discovered
Yeah.
like, Justice, Mr. Oizo, so on and so forth. But like,
That's totally the path I took. Yeah,
Yeah.
from Death from Above through Mastercraft into like Ed Banger, and
Yeah.
and all those bands. Absolutely.
yeah. So I guess back to the questions. Like, did you guys like was there a particular genre you remember listening to just like almost too much? For me, it was like once again that Death from Above era, but it was like that weird indie sleaze New York era
Mhm.
of like Interpol, yes, Death from Above, anything like on Vice Media, stuff like that.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's the way I am with almost anything. You know, you really, really get into a scene for a particular time, and then you just kind of you get distracted by something else, and then you kind of move on to something else. And you might come back to it in the future. It's just kind of always there, but it's just sort of the nature of art, isn't it? Right, Jordan?
Yeah, I think that for me, like 02 to 05, 06, that's what I'll just say that scene music, emo, screamo, post-hardcore, pop punk, that's what that was for me. But it wasn't just the music. Those were the people I was engaging with. That was the business I was literally conducting as someone in a band like that. Those were the shows I was going to, not just as a fan, but to promote shows or to perform my own shows. So that certainly became a center point of my life. Was I interested in other types of music? Sure, but like, you know, as Hansi and Wei were talking about hip hop, like I never fucked with hip hop in the ways which they have. Like it just didn't really speak to me. And I think it wasn't until I got a bit older that I got more interested in, there's this whole world of jazz, and there's this whole world of hip hop, and
Yeah.
there's classical music, and there's like older soul and R&B music. And I think now I'm certainly more interested in I guess different types of music, but I think a lot of it is because my sense of identity or community isn't so tied to one particular music scene or genre.
Yeah, I think that's like certainly the case too, because like with the community I grew up in, it's like my brother, Chinese people and stuff like that. They loved listening to rap music, like so much to the point where it's like if you listen to rock music, like what are you doing? This stuff is so lame.
Which it's so interesting to me. Even Hansi talking about his perspective and kind of resonating with hip hop, like that didn't happen for me. From a cultural perspective, like I looked at most rappers and like I looked more like a guy in Bush than someone in A Tribe Called Quest. And so much of pop, hip hop was gangster rap. Like these were the stories that were being told, and that was worlds away from my own life experience. And also those stories, or the worlds they were creating, just weren't that appealing or interesting to me.
Yeah, sorry. And it's like it's funny you say that because it's like when like do you remember Jin on the Rough Riders?
Yeah.
When he like came out, as the Asian community that I was part of, they're like, oh my god, an Asian rapper, you kidding me? So it's like it blew up. So it's like the cross paths of like, you know, one background and genre of music kind of combining, right? You never really see anything like that.
I'll just say for my experience, I feel like a lot of maybe certainly Chinese people in my neighborhood, and maybe other like non-white communities gravitated towards hip hop because it was like the predominant sort of like non-white
Yeah.
art form.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
and it was cool. It was
Mm.
cooler than, you know, a lot of like what rock people were into at the
Yeah.
time. And man, like it, you know, and for better or worse, because like there was no real popular, cool Asian art form that was in the mainstream media in the West at really at the time, maybe even now. A
Yeah,
lot of
BTS and stuff.
yeah, maybe now things are totally different.
Yeah,
But at the
like
time, there's really nothing else for, I guess, if you know, it was either rock, like, or if you didn't just identify with, I guess, you know, suburban like white kids singing about, I don't know, at the X-Men, then maybe this other thing would be more kind of up your alley.
Yeah.
And for a lot of Asians, it was that. It was hip
A-
hop.
yeah, and it's kind of great seeing that nowadays too, with like Asian people being in rock bands, like a hardcore band called Speed out of Australia. Most of them are Asian dudes. One of them's a Laotian guy. That's my ethnicity, and just seeing that, it's kind of like it. I guess I kind of kin it to like when Shang-Chi came out, where it's like you see an pivotal Asian character in a mainstream movie, and you see something like that in a rock band, you just kind of feel like, yeah, this is the time. This is great. Um, we're more than just, you know, the stereotype, I suppose. Like
Mhm.
we can be aggressive. We can talk about like how the things we grew up in and stuff like that. I think it just it feels like these things just kind of have to take a bit of time for it to kind of just manifest itself.
Mm.
Yeah, but it's interesting how powerful like be like something like that being in a rock band on a public stage can somehow create such a um I guess powerful thought and form of empowerment for somebody. Like on
Yeah.
the surface, it's so simple. There's a guy playing bass guitar like in a band, but
Yeah.
I don't know. It means a lot more maybe when you see it so rarely. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, thanks for having me once again, Jordan. Thanks, or not thanks, but congratulations.
Thank you, Johnny. Great
No
call.
problem. All
Appreciate
right.
you,
See
brother.
you guys. Bye.
Thank you, Johnny. Appreciate it. Let's go up next to Stefan. Hey, Stefan.
What's up,
Hey,
Stefan?
how's it going, guys?
What's going
Great,
on?
man.
Thanks for waiting patiently. What's up?
Oh, not too much. First of all, It's Dark and Hell is Hot. Fantastic album. Definitely one of my gateway albums. And secondly, Jordan, congratulations. I didn't mean to put that second, but you know how it works.
Thank you.
One of the things that I actually wanted to talk about, and is something that our last couple of calls have kind of got to, is the universality of music and how it kind of connects to everyone regardless of what you're trying to seek out of it. And I remember thinking, you know, like a lot of other callers here, my real first genre coming into, you know, buying my own albums, things like that, were hip hop, rap, that kind of thing. And one of the things that I remember the most is my dad, who was a huge Bollywood music guy, hating the music, absolutely saying things like, "This isn't music." You know, music requires things like melody, and going into musical theory and stuff like that. And it eventually turned into little things where I would start watching, an anime or something like that, and all of a sudden I'd like the theme song, and I'd listen to the theme song, or I'd look into the artist. And I remember when I was first dating my now wife, she was watching an anime called Inuyasha. I ended up really liking one of the ending theme songs, and the singer ended up becoming like one of my favorite artists for like the next 5-6 years. I was consuming her albums like it was a regular Western album that you would get at a regular store. It was that kind of appointment listening to me. And I remember when I would play those things for my dad, and just like me, I mean, I don't speak Japanese. I don't understand a word of any of the music that's happening. And unlike my father, when he would listen to Bollywood music, I don't understand Hindi. So none of it means anything to me. But the feelings that it engenders in you, the way that it can pull emotions out of you. I remember sitting with my dad watching, I think it was This Is It, the Michael Jackson movie. And at one point during a song, my dad just happened to point out, and he's like, "Do you understand there that the key changed? in the middle of the song, the key changed
Mhm.
in order to elicit an emotional response from you. And it's strange because now, as a father myself, watching my daughter interact with music that I never liked, that I never really enjoyed, but watching her just kind of vibe with it on that level, it provides a kind of, as I said, a universality to music. It's so unique that I don't find it in many other forms of entertainment or any other kind of medium of transmission. Sorry, my brain
So
is gone.
specifically, that experience that you had with your daughter,
Yeah.
this was her reacting to a key change.
It
in
was. We were listening to
Man in the Mirror?
Michael Jackson. Yeah. And I think it was Man in the Mirror. In the middle of the song, there's a key change,
Mhm.
and the look on her face. She could feel the change in the tone of the song.
Mhm.
And it was something that up until my dad had pointed, if my dad had never said to me, there's a key change here, I would never have known, but I could feel it.
Yeah.
And that is one of the things that I appreciate the most.
It's almost magic, isn't it?
It
I
is.
mean, that sounds so cliche coming out of my mouth, but it really is, because it's almost inexplicable, the universal human reaction to tricks like that.
But
You know?
imagine like a movie without music, or a certain commercial without, or going to a sporting event without music.
Absolutely.
You know, like
It-
music is inherently like emotional,
Yeah.
and artists, musicians understand the tools and the tricks and the medium enough to, not unlike expert pro wrestlers, to manipulate our emotional experience.
Absolutely. And one of my favorite television shows of all time is Buffy the Vampire Slayer. There is an episode, deliberately they choose to cut all background music, all sound effects, with the intention of that feeling of no background noise to be a kind of disruptive, to feel awkward, to feel off. And it worked very well.
I feel like you brought up Buffy the Vampire Slayer before on this.
Unfortunately, yeah, that is something I do.
but I mean, listen, it seems like you got a lot from the show, so a wonderful example. I guess I'm curious, what's your favorite album of all time?
So this is going to sound really stupid, but when I was 9, my uncle and aunt actually recorded an album, and my dad guested on it as a harmonica player. So
What?
that is my favorite album. I know it
What kind
doesn't.
of album? What kind of music?
It was Indian music. My entire family is big into Bollywood music. Like literally, our family get-togethers end with people doing karaoke. It is what we do.
Cool.
And my uncle, who had been told for many, many years, "You've got a voice like this star from the '70s," decided one day that his wife, who was a singer back home, decided they would record an album together, named it after their kids, my cousins, and put it out there. And my dad guested playing harmonica on a number of tracks, and it was one of those things that as a kid, you're finding it kind of annoying. You have to go to the studio and you're bored. But when the album came out and they're doing things like concerts, and I'm watching people coming to see my aunt, my uncle, watching my dad play the harmonica, it was a completely different experience.
That's
Wow.
awesome, dude. Amazing. And it makes a lot of sense why maybe your dad would have some of those opinions, being being a musician himself.
Yes.
Right? So thank you so much, Stefan. Appreciate
Thank
the
you.
call.
Have a great day, guys.
Thank you, bud. You too.
And thank you everybody who decided to call in. Sorry if we didn't have time to maybe get to some of you guys before you had to hang up, but some lovely calls, really great topic. What else do we need to say about this topic, Jordan?
I mean, I could talk forever. Unfortunately, I got some work to do in a minute or so. But like, we didn't even get into music's role in pro wrestling, like wrestling theme songs, for instance. Even just the trope of a wrestler comes out to like interfere or whatever, and their music plays. Like, objectively kind of stupid and obviously unrealistic, but there's a reason why music is used in a trope like that, because it's this audio identifier or signature that we relate to these. Even like last night on Raw, Cody didn't have to say Randy Orton's name, but he could say, the voices in his head.
Sure, totally. Well, it creates a mood, right? First of all,
Yeah.
and it's also sudden. And it's like, short of turning the lights off and turning them back on and having the Undertaker or Sabu appear in the ring. I mean, this is like the most immediate impact you could have of saying, "This person is here."
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah. So we feel literally feel the vibration of music. I like I said, my two loves of life, music and pro wrestling.
And now your fiance.
Of course, I thought, but she gets it.
Number 3.
Yes, a distant number 3, we could say. Shout out Steve Blinky. Music is a part of who I am. Pro wrestling is something I love. It's something I mess with, but I am a musician, and like there's a reason. Now, granted, I also have the 1980s WWF tattoo like on my leg. That's the other tattoo I have. But there's a reason why I branded this Kid A concept art on my body as a 18 or 19-year-old. Like, it's just music is a part of who I am. It's a sense of self. It's a sense of identity. And there's a reason why I bet on being a musician as someone who works with people for the purposes of healing and group entrainment or growth. It's because for millennia, really since the beginning of humanity, all over the world, people have responded to and used music as a method of healing and of community building, of bonding. Music is life, I think, quite simply. So volume 2, a wonderful conversation. I don't see why we couldn't have a volume 3 and 4 if this show keeps rolling on, because show me someone who doesn't have some sort of significant relationship to music. Even if people say they don't, like, I don't know if that's quite accurate, because music is all around them all the time. And whether they like it or not, whether they realize it or not, they are often unconsciously being affected by it.
Last word goes to Mr. Kane, who's decided to call in from his
Very last minute.
Yes, sir.
Very last minute. I cannot let this episode go without mentioning the great band that is Korn.
Yes, absolutely.
When I was a youngster, a little one. I mean, like many of you, like Jordan. I mean, my first experience was with like, the popular stuff like Michael Jackson. That was early kid years, but I didn't. Music didn't really like infiltrate my life. I didn't have a soundtrack to it until a friend of mine in middle school invited me over to his house. He had this new program called Napster. And he was downloading music tracks, and he played Falling Away From Me. Not just one version, but 2 different versions. And he was trying to get me to see the differences in the intro. And I was just, the eerie intro to Falling Away From Me, and then suddenly that gritty, guttural, just the way Jonathan Davis just put, just exerts on the lyrics. From that point, I had to get more, and it was speaking to me for a teenager, not really the popular kid, kind of antisocial. That spoke to me. I came from Los Angeles, from South Central, kind of near South Central LA. Hip hop wasn't it. Gangster rap was not it. That was the stuff we got away from. My family moved us from Gardena, California to San Diego because we were trying to get away from that kind of stuff. what they were spewing out was not appealing to me. It wasn't appealing to, and then it wasn't my jam.
Like,
But
was
this
it was it because it was so, like, because you saw it? Was it because it was real to you? Because,
I
like, I'll
think
say, like, when we listen to NWA up here, for us, it's almost just like fantasy. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like, we're so removed from it that we don't really see the realities of it, even if it sounds, like it's real.
I'll tell you this. I've had I have two older brothers. They both experienced loss in their life in adolescence
Mm.
on the streets. So yeah, it is real. It was very real, and it's still real over there as we speak. Um, it wasn't something to romanticize or glorify. I didn't find it. Although if you every genre of music has its points. It's dark points, it's dark tones. I mean, especially when we look at a band like Korn and what it covers. Life is Peachy.
Mhm.
That with early child abuse. But
Korn was the band that you happen to identify with as sort of like something, something that maybe you either aspire to or spoke of something that you could about your life.
well, I guess it goes through phases, right? As I was introduced into rock and new metal with Linkin Park, and there was that grunge, that kind of revolution there, but it was so short lived, such as adolescence. Then you become an adult, and you start trying to find your own way. I entered my goth phase, and so I was into Bauhaus. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, but that's always how I pronounced it.
Mhm.
and DNV Nation, just the dark, sober, melancholic. That spoke to me. That
Mm.
spoke to me at the time. And then, sorry for the background noise, but
But
then
just
went back into
you even
more.
talking about that, like, I already feel like I have an understanding of the type of person you were at those points. Like, it's a glimpse into internally maybe what we might be, our taste in
Right.
music. Yeah.
Right, and then going even now, I go with the more of the classic rock. I think my favorite album is right now at this point in time is Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd.
Mm.
I think a lot of those songs there resonate with my current state that I am right now,
Mm.
being in my 38, and I think that speaks to me right now. I'm not those the dark, the grunge that had its time, and I still look back fondly, and I still listen to that music. I still could put on Korn, and I listen to that Slipknot, and enjoy it. But I don't know if it resonates with my current me.
Right. But it was there for
Right.
you at that time, and I mean, that'll always be valid. So thank you so much for sharing, Mr. Kane.
You're
Much
welcome.
Thank
appreciated.
you, Mr. Kane.
Lovely,
Yeah.
lovely glimpse into everybody from all around the world listening to this podcast. So great topic, great choice, Jordan. What are we going to be talking about next month?
I don't know. What do you want to talk about? You pick next month.
I want to talk a bit more about your engagement and
Uh,
the idea of commitment is
mm,
is a topic that I certainly thought a lot about, before getting married myself. We'll have to, of course, reconvene with Mr. Flanagan to see what he wants to discuss as well. But that's at least one topic that we might visit at some point in the near
okay.
future.
Sounds good. Maybe next month it could be like a re-audition of sorts for Neil.
A re-audition, yeah. See if he
Yeah.
can get his job back.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you everybody for listening to this right now. I had a lot of fun with this episode. If you are listening in the archive, we will be live next month on the 19th, 3 p.m. Eastern time at youtube.com/postwrestling. So join us then. And
MGM2